Welcome everybody to the Personal Health Summit for an extremely exciting conversation we have today with Matt Kahn. For those who don't know, Matt Kahn is a highly regarded spiritual teacher and intuitive who combines a heart-centered awareness of unity consciousness with a profound understanding of the mystical nature of reality. He offers a message and energetic transmissions to serve the awakening of humanity to assist you in your journey of embodying more peace, ease and love than ever before. Matt's the author of the best-selling book, Whatever Arises, Love That, and I'm looking forward to exploring more of that today. You can find out more about Matt at truedivinenature.com. Thank you all, firstly, so much for being here, for listening to all these incredible conversations they're having on this summit. Thank you to the Ultimate Human Foundation for the incredible work they're doing, working towards the elimination of chronic pain and disease from the planet. Thank you to our major sponsor, PH360, for being able to bring us a tangible understanding about how we're all very different in the world and what's right for us to be healthy and happy. But love to jump in. I can't wait for this conversation today. Matt Kahn, thank you so much for being here. Really looking forward to this.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really an honor to be here with you.
Beautiful. Well, Matt, I'd love just to start out by hearing a little bit about you and how you got to be doing what you're doing today. You're obviously doing incredible things in the world. Tell us a little bit about Matt and how you got to be doing this, and how did you fall into this whatever you want to call it you're doing right now.
How did I fall into all this? Well, it's one of those funny things where it's not necessarily something that I pursued, but something that found me. You always have some of us have a sense that we're here to do something, and we don't necessarily know what that is. And I really didn't know what I was here to do, but if I look back on my life, everything that's happened has led me exactly here, and all the signs were there as I look back. But it was really something that found me. And throughout my entire life, I've been prepared for this. And it all began for me when I was around 8 years old, and I had an out-of-body experience, and growing up in a Jewish family and having an experience with an illuminated figure that I later realized was Jesus, after seeing a painting of Jesus in my friend's living room and saying, that's who I met in my dream, which I thought was a dream, but it was an out-of-body experience. And just really, throughout my life, spiritual experiences have always found me. And I've always had experiences, and I've always been deeply drawn to spiritual evolution. And I never really pursued spirituality from any kind of notion that it would make me feel better or change my circumstances. For me, I've just had this insatiable desire to explore the mysteries of existence. And I've always had this intense inner drive just to know how far out and how deeply everything goes. And so my entire life has been endless spiritual experiences and awakenings of consciousness. And just when you think things can't expand anymore and, okay, I think I've seen the truth, you go to the next floor of consciousness and things expand again and everything changes again. And so I've just developed this tendency to be totally in a position where I can experience and welcome newer realities, but then I'm always in a place where I'm ready for everything to change on a dime. So it's been a very interesting experience, and one that I am most thankful and grateful that with all of the abilities that I've been given and with all of the experiences I've been provided, it has simply prepared me to be able to live in service for the evolution of all, and that's my greatest joy.
That's beautiful, Matt. Thank you for sharing that with us today. And it's really great to see these conversations that are happening a lot more in the mainstream now. There's a lot of bridge between the science and the spirituality worlds, and a lot of the conversations now where there's a lot of proof for people to be able to have a belief in things, and science brings belief to people, and that's an important step in the whole evolution of I guess consciousness on the planet. And I'm interested to ask you some questions around that, because your book, Whatever Arises, Love That, is becoming quite a popular phenomenon in conscious communities around the globe. Can you share a little bit about what that's all about? What is the whatever you're referring to? Why is it important to love that? You can just the concepts behind this book for us who are listening to this today.
Sure. Well, Whatever Arises, Love That is, highlights the notion that really transformation of consciousness is not about changing things in our lives, but about changing the relationship we have with whatever arises in life. And it's very common for people to think, oh, whatever arises, love that. I should, I feel sad, I should love the sadness. And in a sense, that's true. But really what Whatever Arises, Love That is about is loving the one who's experiencing sadness, loving the one who's experiencing difficulty, loving the one who's experiencing frustration for what's happening in the world, whether we're talking about Standing Rock or political stuff, loving the one who's having the experience they're having. So if we think about the most typical symptom of suffering, people would say it's separation from source. And really what divides us from source is that the universe, consciousness, is always honoring and engaging with us in the most loving and beautiful and heart-centered way. And the way we perceive ourselves, the way we've been conditioned to see ourselves, is often not as honoring and unconditionally loving. So really the most essential way to resolve this perceived separation from source is when we learn to join with the universe in loving and honoring and cherishing and nurturing ourselves the way the universe always has and always will. And so with Whatever Rises Love That, I decided to write a book, and of course it's things that are written through me, but I wrote a book where step by step I wanted to teach humanity how to return to love, how to resolve this separation from source, not by trying to overcome duality or trying to overcome the notion of illusion, but just seeing that I feel as separate from the divine as I am out of practice with loving myself in such a divine way. And if I can learn to return to source, if I can learn to join the divine in loving and honoring myself the way divinity always has, then we merge back into the light of our true nature, and it really starts to not only activate our highest healing, but starts to bring forth our deepest levels of awakening. So from my perspective and from my experiences, all the deepest mystical and spiritual experiences can unfold in the most mature way when we dare to love ourselves as never before.
Thanks for giving us such a great starting point here. And this is the concept of this is great. And I want to unpack this a little bit because these are big concepts that we're talking about. And
yeah,
let's start with love. Like, what is love? What's its role in consciousness and healing? How do we lead our lives from the heart? Like, what is love? Let's start there.
What is love? That's a wonderful question. So love is not limited to the electricity of arousal, or what we call attraction. Most people know love as an attraction, as a super duper preference. I'd love to go there. I'd love to do this. Or that attraction of, I'd love to have this person in my life. Or I'd love if this happened to me. So most times from an egoic standpoint, we think of love as a super duper preference or as the electricity of arousal. And not that that's not a part of love on some level, but if we talk about the deepest love, the most fundamental understanding of love, is that love is the recognition that the divine has of itself in a different form. And because the light in me and the light in you is the same light, when we connect and that light meets itself in the perception of another, or in the play of individuality, that reconnection, that remembrance that starts to happen in both beings becomes a moment of divine recognition, and we call that recognition love. And so really when we talk about love, it's the more aligned we are in our divinity, the more loving we tend to be towards ourselves and others. The less loving we tend to be towards ourselves and others, the more forgetful of our divine nature, or the more out of alignment we are with divinity. So we learn to love ourselves on an emotional level. We learn to nurture ourselves in the way maybe a parent never has, in a way maybe a lover never could. And we learn to be the lover, the parent, and the friend and the companion that we've never had or have lost. So by being the one that loves us more than ever before on an emotional level, that heals all wounds, resolves all fractures, and returns us into the light of divinity, to where we can carry, embody, and radiate this divine recognition or energy of love to awaken that and all.
And that's such beautiful words you share. I love how the words flow through you. And it's one of the things that I just want to really unpack this a lot today, because these are concepts. And
please,
it's sharing a lot about divinity and about reconnection or disconnection with source. Can you just share a little bit about that too? Like, what is divinity? What is source? What does that mean to those listening today?
Absolutely. Well, divinity would obviously be the source from which all things come from. That all things come from source. People may not know what the source is. People may not know where the source is, or people may not know how to envision it. And I think that's part of the thing, is that it seems so abstract, because all of the visions we could have of Source are of all the forms that emanate out of Source or within Source. That Source itself is so omnipresent. Source itself is so infinite. Source is so ever-present and intangible simultaneously, that everything said about it is an expression of it, and everything said to describe it is not even anything close to what it is. So that makes it very elusive by nature, for it to be everything, nothing, everyone, no one. You get into these really weird paradoxical wordplay when you start talking about it, because you want to include everything, you don't want to attach to anything, and you get into these kind of weird swirls about it. But when we talk about Source or divinity, we're talking about the source of all things. And the source of all things, just to give this conversation, a healthy dose of simplicity. What is the primary form that Source takes in every moment? What is, or where is Source for you to begin discovering it right here, right now? And if I said another name for Source was breath. That breath is nothing but Source. And when you give your attention to your breath, and you breathe in and you breathe out, you at that moment have returned to Source. And in returning to Source, the divine recognition of love that you would have with another starts to happen within yourself. So the real essence of my book is we love our hearts to make it safe to return to our breath, and we return to our breath to radiate the love that awakens all.
What a beautiful, powerful, simple message, Matt. And thank you for sharing this with us today, and for sharing that message with the world. Matt, I want to explore a little bit about some of these very intriguing concepts that you share, and as you refer to some of the gifts that you have. These concepts of intuition. Now, we're here on a personal health summit. We're talking a lot about people with different bodies, people with different minds, people with different hearts and different souls, and everybody's on an individual journey. The whole message, I guess, underlying for this summit is everybody's different. Go and find out who you are, whether it's the foods that you eat that responds differently, whether it's the way that you connect with Source, like whatever it is for you in your journey. Find out what's right for you, find out where you're at, and how to connect and how to move along in a space of health and happiness. If we look at this concept of intuition, some people will be, I feel like eating this today, or I feel like my body's in tune with that, I feel like I should do this exercise, I feel like that. Obviously intuition is from a bigger spiritual sense. Can you share a little bit about what intuition is with all of us, and how do we listen to this voice, or whatever that may be?
Absolutely. Well, I'll give you an interesting answer, because I can only share not only what comes through me, but I can share with you based on my experiences. And I had an experience that I think is interesting, or a realization that I thought was really interesting. And it's a realization where as you hear the realization, only the deepest, it's a funny thing where it's a realization about what intuition is that is only going to resonate with the intuition within you. So that's the funny thing. It's a realization about intuition that only the intuition can recognize, which is perfect. But I thought about this for a while, and again, in my life, I always like to contemplate, because it always just helps take things to a deeper level. And I thought about, intuition is obviously the guidance of your soul, guiding you into your highest timeline and possibility. But I started thinking, like, well, what is it? What is that really? What really is intuition? And then I had this fascinating realization. So here's the fascinating realization. You've heard of the word reincarnation, where the idea is that this is not the first time you and I have been in a body, maybe with different names. And of course, everyone was some famous character, and
we probably had different hairdressers at the time, and
yeah. No, this lifetime
two bald Matts on this conversation was probably
you and I were obviously in the same soul groups where we decided to rock this. But so the reincarnations, we've been here before, but then there's a term that came to me one day, a word, and I don't know if I came up with it or if it just came to me, but the word is meta-incarnation. And meta-incarnation is a sense or a knowing that this is not the first time you have incarnated in this particular lifetime. So what if you playing Matt and me playing Matt, right? What if this is not the first time we have actually lived this particular lifetime? And the intuition is we have actually done this so many times that we remember what we incarnated to do differently. We remember what's been in our highest interest, and we remember the choices that we needed to make to live out what we think is up ahead, but what really has already played out. So what if every time we incarnate into the same body and character and storyline, we move into a different timeline or perspective, just like we move into a different seat of the theater to watch the same movie, but from a different perspective, to glean different insights for our journey ahead. So it's not even just that we've lived before as different characters, but we've lived this life many, many, many times. And so to me, intuition is we've already lived this life out many, many times, and we keep coming back because we don't want to wait till the end to wake up. We want to wake up as soon as possible so we can embody our highest consciousness and enjoy the play from start to finish.
Beautiful. Kind of like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, where you kind of
exactly
come back and you've got a good understanding about what's there. And so Matt, talk us through that. I love that analogy. That's really easy to follow for all of us who are listening to the call right now. I'm sure everybody listening to this is really fascinated with these concepts, and it's like, great, well, if I'm living the same movie again, or if I'm coming back in the same role, like, how do I actually harness that? Because, you know, what I'm doing, I feel like I'm just going about my day-to-day life. I can't remember what happened last time. I want all those insights.
That's right.
How do I get them? Like, how do I tap into that intuition? Or how do I tap into that kind of knowing what's coming next, or knowing what's, you know, what I should do in the moment? Can you just talk us through a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So how do we not get stuck in that current or that continuum of doing the same things we've done throughout all incarnations? How do we do the different things we came here to do? Well, intuition begins with being receptive and aware of our feelings. So intuition, and not that the logical mind isn't a wonderful part of this whole, process. I'm not here to, renounce ego or diss the logical, rational mind, because it all plays a very key part in all of this. So, the logical mind, the rational mind, the intuition, all of these are just quadrants of our energy field, and we can't think that one's more important than the other. But if we're talking about intuition, intuition is, instead of being guided or drawn by just the things I want or repelled by the things I don't want, I start to feel into every moment, and I start to tune into how do things feel versus what do I think about the things I see. And if we start to go from judgment of here's what I think about what's in view to what am I really feeling? And if we come to a choice, the question is, what feels right to me? Meaning, if something feels good, I should go in that direction. If something doesn't feel good, even if it's something I should do, maybe right now is not the moment I meant to do it. Something I always say to people as a really simple way of following your intuition is, when it's a yes, nothing can stop you. And when you're not sure, it's always a no. So if we want to develop our intuition, what we have to do is, if we're not sure, that doesn't mean think about it for days and days and days. If you're not sure, say no. And that's how you start to become very definitive in your knowing, so that the universe starts to bring you definitive yeses and definitive nos. Someone on TV, and this is actually, I didn't make this up, but I heard it on TV, and I thought it was like just one of the most awesome things I've ever heard. I was watching a TV show, and this person said something about following your inner guidance. And they said, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And I just laughed. I thought that was like, you know what? That's just the greatest way to distill it down to something so simple. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And I think there's a tendency in this world, especially in the spiritual journey, where the innocent tendency is, I'm so afraid of missing out on something that I'm afraid to be bold and definitive. And so I think we have to get really definitive and bold and realize we're not here to miss anything. We can't miss anything. And yet by trying not to miss something, we miss out on the joy of coming here to be as definitive and trustworthy in our own senses. And that's part of the joy of why we came back.
Excellent, mate. Thank you very much for unpacking that. And so a big takeaway from that, I think, is really, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. If
it's not a hell yes, it's hell no. And again, how do things feel to me? Like, you go to a restaurant, right? And you look at a menu, right? You can read the description of a dish and go, well, that sounds good. What feels good to my body? And start allowing your body to instruct you on what to do. And there's just that little gray area. There's that little gray area where we can confuse the ego desires, the desires of ego, for, oh, this feels good, I want this, this must be my intuition, right? And it's the desire of the ego still playing out, which isn't something that's bad. It's just a matter of, we have to start feeling. So let me clarify this. What feels good to the body, but the true yes that comes from the soul, from the highest wisdom, it is a yes, it is a definitive yes, and it is a calm yes. When it's a desire from the ego, it's a yes, but it's almost this panic of, I've got to hurry up and do it because I'm going to miss out, or I've got to do this or else. So the true yes is a yes, a definitive yes, a calm yes. The egoic desire is a panicky race against time. I got to do this or else.
Beautiful. And Matt, how do we get the yes or the no? Is this something that do we hear a word? Do we get it written on a billboard for us? Can you talk us through this? And I'll give you an example, because this is a very relevant conversation, and I'm just sort of bringing the intuition back into here, because we're talking a lot about health right now. We're talking a lot about understanding about the navigation on the journeys that we have. And for some people, it's confusing to say, well, you know what, I really, maybe I'm sitting here and I'm 30 pounds overweight, and I've got diabetes, and I've got heart disease issues, and I've got other things, and it's been running my family, and I don't want to end up that way, and I know what's coming for me from all the things they're saying. You know what? But when I look at that chocolate cake every single day, it feels like I want it, because I feel like I'm going to feel good when I eat that. And so for that's my intuition saying it feels good, so I'll eat it. I keep eating it. And how do we actually discern between what some of these things? Because there's a difference between what feels good, is it something we desire, versus what we feel is good and fully aligned with our journey. So could you help us unpack that a little bit for those listening? Because it is a very confusing thing a lot of the time, because we do feel like that.
Sure.
Right.
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about the ego desires versus the true yes of what you're meant to follow. When you're following a desire of the ego, or when you're saying yes to something that is really just an instant form of gratification, the draw, the attraction to the yes is primarily based around, I want something because it helps me avoid or distract from something else. So someone who is emotionally feeding themselves with cake, for example, is usually suppressing some emotion they don't want to feel. So I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, with the thing I'm attracted to, is this thing helping me avoid something I don't want to face? Am I saying yes because I want it, or if I just stop and take a step back? And by the way, just like I said before, if you're in front of a piece of cake, and I'm using just this example because you brought it up, and there's like I want the cake, but there's that panicky feeling of, I've got to hurry up and have the cake. Remember, if it's a race against time, if it's a panicky yes, that's the ego trying to feed itself with a desire, which the reason why that's not so advisable is because feeding an ego's desire is only going to make it more hungry and more desperate and more insatiable. So if it's a yes that comes with that panicky, I need this, that often is the tip off that that's really just the ego and not really my intuition. If your ego is more subtle and it's just like, I want cake right now, you have to ask yourself, which is fine if you have cake, having this piece of cake, for example, is having this cake helping me avoid or deny anything within me? How is this cake helping me? That's a great question. How is it helping me? And if we can have the consciousness, and then the ego can expose itself, and we go, okay, I'm having the cake because it makes me less lonely, or it takes me out of my sadness, or whatever it is, then we go, okay, obviously anything that I would do that helps me avoid and deny something is counterproductive to my evolution. So I think the first sense is tuning into your feelings, following what feels good. If it's a panic, a race against time, hey, I need this, I have this, or I have to have this or else, that's a tip off that it's something you probably shouldn't do. And if it's something that you're drawn to that in the back of your mind may not be good for your health, the question is, how is this helping me? How is making this choice helping me? What is it helping me deny and avoid? And if we can be aware of the fact that we're doing something to deny and avoid something on an emotional level, then that in itself is a reason not to make that choice, because that's only going to take us further into denial, further into avoidance, where we are separated from our highest wisdom, and of course not caring for the body, but destroying the body in the most subtle and socially acceptable way.
Mm. Thank you for unpacking that for us, Matt. And that's a great way to think about it. How is this cake helping me is such a great question. And I guess we can all look at whether we're talking about a piece of chocolate cake or a nice organic gluten-free carrot cake, whatever it is. We're just this is something that the concepts is what we're bringing to this conversation.
And by the way, if something's not helping you, right, you have the choice. You can have it or you can't have it. But if something's not helping you, then why make such an unproductive choice? Meaning, I'm not saying every once in a while people shouldn't enjoy cake and enjoy themselves. They should, but really, if this is helping me avoid and deny, that's not good for me. If there's no benefit to it, that's not helping me. And it's a really interesting journey to not only learn to be in tune with our intuition, but I think what's really important to know is in order for us to be in tune with our intuition, we have to really ask ourselves a bold question. And that is, if you were in tune with your intuition, would you be in a place, or are you in a place to actually listen to its guidance and follow it? Or do you just want to consider it? And if we can go into a place and say, you know what, before I even start tuning into my intuition, I trust and honor the word of the divine. And whatever the divine says in me that is in my highest interest, no matter what I have to sacrifice, no matter how inconvenient it is, no matter how much I feel like I'm going without, or how deficient I feel because I'm unable to avoid the things that don't feel good, I surrender to allowing the word of the divine to being fulfilled within me, no questions asked. And when we start with that point, one doesn't have to learn how to listen to their intuition. So here's the funny thing. People learn to listen to their intuition because they're not ready to follow it. If you can surrender and say, God, show me the way, I'll follow your word, I'll do whatever you want to do, I'll eat whatever healthy way you want me to eat, I'll surrender whatever pattern I need to, just show me the light. If we start with that, you don't need to learn how to listen to your intuition. The people that want to learn are in negotiation. So if we stop negotiating and fully surrender, it all becomes so obvious.
Thank you, Matt. So stop negotiating, surrender, and we can have our cake and eat it too, no doubt.
We can have our cake and eat it too, yes.
So Matt, let's. I guess I've got one question about that I'm sure is on the tips of everyone's tongues. Is if it's that easy, why is it so difficult? Why is this such a tough journey in our minds for some people? Why is there, why does this happen? Like, why can't it just be easy? What can you just share about that in your experience or your understanding? Or
yeah,
it's a very interesting conversation because it seems so hard for people to be healthy. There's more than 4 billion people in the world right now suffering from chronic pain and disease. It's easy to say, look, if this cake isn't serving you, don't eat it. But a lot of people need to eat it, or they have to eat it. They don't want to eat it. The cake saying, I don't want to eat you, but here I'm putting it in my mouth again because of emotion.
Right.
Maybe underneath that. Why is this so difficult? Why is it so hard? Like, how can we make this more easy and simple?
Well, there's two things going on. One is that I think a lot of people don't fathom the idea of being happy without getting their way. So what people are looking for is, I want to be in tune with an intuition that tells me what to do, that gives me what I want, and doesn't require me to change. And that becomes kind of the sticking point of the ego, where the ego wants what it wants. It doesn't want to change, but it wants everything that it wants to change at its will. And so that's where we kind of, at a certain point of suffering, at a certain point of evolution, we go, look, I may or may not get everything I want. I'm probably going to get more than I want. And I have to be ready to say, instead of focusing on what I want, what does life or the universe want from me? And if I can willingly, authentically, not, I'm going to say these words because I'm going to trick the universe and give me what I want. Not like a manifestation tool, right? But as a really authentic offering of, I offer myself in service to the universe. Universe, do with me what you want. Let me serve your will. And in that, people are going to find true happiness. Now, it may be they may get exactly what they want. They may get more than what they want. They may find that the things that they were begging so much for were actually small in comparison to what life had planned for them. So it's very surprising, I think, when people find out that we can be totally happy, fulfilled, rewarded, and abundant, and it may or may not have anything to do with what we want. And the other part of that, which is going a little deeper, is that the social programming of the ego. Now, there's two basic kind of egos. There's the narcissistic ego, which I call the superior ego in my book. There's the energetically sensitive soul that usually has what's called an inferior ego. And the inferior ego is one that doesn't feed themselves by thinking they're better than others. Most energetically sensitive souls, most light workers, have an inferior ego, which means it's an ego that feeds itself by feeling bad about itself, feeling bad about the world. And it usually oscillates between I feel bad or I'm in fear. Actually, to be technical, there's three oscillations. I feel bad, I'm in fear, and I don't know what to do. And we go all through these quadrants, back and forth, back and forth. And so the ego in most people cannot stay alive if it's not constantly feeding itself with feeling bad about something, being afraid of something, or not knowing what to do in regards to something. So if someone shouldn't eat cake, for example, and cake is in front of them, and their ego has not been fed, and if the ego doesn't get fed, it totally unravels. What is the easiest thing for the ego to do but say, this character shouldn't eat cake. Let's make them eat cake. They're going to feel bad about themselves, and we get fed. So do you see that kind of that's kind of like a sabotage program? Now, someone who's being controlled by ego has no idea they're being controlled by ego. So the fact that I can say this and you can understand what I'm saying and everyone watching this goes, oh my God, that totally makes sense. That means we're not being controlled by the ego because we're obviously at a certain degree awake from it. And the more we wake up out of ego. Ego is not an enemy, it's just something that unravels within us. And we no longer have to feel bad, be afraid, or not know what to do. And as we wake up out of those things, we unravel that tendency and we reside in our natural state of the soul as that which feels good, that which knows no fear, and that which knows exactly what to do without always needing to know what the plan is. And that's what happens as we awaken. We go from one extreme to the other.
Beautiful, Matt. And let's just navigate through this a little bit for like a tangible application of this on the call, because again, what you share there is just so beautiful. But it's obviously very, very difficult to be in that space for a lot of people. In fact, most people all the time. Otherwise, we'd be having these sorts of conversations on this call if everyone was in that space. So if people get the concept, it's like, cool, I get it. What Matt's saying makes perfect sense. But you know what, I try, but it's hard. And like, how do we go about sort of either living and making peace or harmony with the ego? How do we work with that if it's part of us? How do we sort of gain freedom from some of the emotional or mental prisons that exist in our minds? Can you just sort of give us some ideas maybe for those who are listening right now who feel like, I've tried all this, I do try and listen to my intuition, I do try and be a good person, I do try and not be attached, I do try and go through life without expectations or anything like that at all. I do try, but I feel like stuff keeps happening or it's difficult. Where do we start here? If you had a few starting points for people who are in that place, where do we start, those who are listening right now with their pens and papers out? Where do we go from this point moving forward?
Well, absolutely. And I'm going to use as an example some of the words you just said. Just to kind of, because a lot of times our words are like these blueprints that we don't even know are like being revealed. And so notice like in what you just said, and again, it's not what you just said, but an example of what a lot of people say, and I experience this. People say, I try not to do this. I try not to be in my thoughts, or I try not to be attached. Notice that most versions of try are trying to not do something. So I'm attempting to do something that it will be positive, but in a negatively reinforced way. So in my book, Whatever Rises, Live That, what I would rather people do with their time is instead of waking up trying not to do something destructive and then being down on themselves for falling into it. Instead, the question is, instead of what am I going to try not to do, what is the thing that I really want more than anything else, which is communion with divinity, connection with my heart, and the ability to feel and receive love. Most people are going to reach for a piece of cake as a form of emotional comfort, as a way of filling the void of emotional connection that they don't have with others or themselves. So instead of trying not to do something, let's try to do something productive on a daily basis. And what if instead of reaching for the symbols that give us emotional nourishment but don't give us nutritional nourishment, what if when the craving comes for something that's not good for us, that becomes like a little bell that goes off and we say, this is the perfect time for me to stop what I'm doing and let me love myself directly and give myself the emotional nourishment I need without compromising my health in any way. And that can be like sitting for a moment, whether our eyes are open or closed. We become aware of our breath, right? Not a deep breath, just I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And with our hand on our heart, we just direct our consciousness to the center of our body. And whether out loud or silently, we say, I love you. As if every I love you, the sound I love you of the word, whether telepathic, which is what, when we think it, telepathic, or verbal, I love you is the frequency of energy that is really translating on a soul level to say, remember how much you matter. Because when we remember how much we matter, what we choose to eat matters. What we choose to say matters. What we choose to act upon matters. So we are taking the time to love ourselves more, not less, so we can remember how much we matter. And only as we remember how much we matter do the choices that matter begin to be acted upon. So when we notice the craving for something, we stop, take a few breaths, and it's time to love the heart. And whether we feel an opening occur or we feel nothing at all, because sometimes the I love yous is just there to dissolve and unravel those barriers we have against love, right? For some people in our lives who said they loved us but then hurt us and betrayed us, abandoned us, or someone who abused us in our life and then said, I love you, a few moments afterwards. And so maybe we've developed this aversion to the word love, or we've learned subconsciously that love is a very scary place to be. We in our own selves can recreate the terms and conditions of how love is within ourselves. And we have to just learn to reacquaint ourselves with our own loving kindness. And again, that begins with, instead of just blindly acting upon the things that I know may not be good for me, and instead of trying not to do something negative, I'm going to start doing something positive. And when the craving for something destructive arises, food, alcohol, smoking, whatever it is, instead we stop in that moment, we take a moment of pause, and we say, let me love myself more, not less, even if it's just being with your breath, saying I love you is the way a parent or a loved one never did to you. As we start to give ourselves exactly what we need, instead of reaching for the things that are only going to put us deeper into the hole of desperation and sorrow.
Thank you, Matt. That's such a great place to start and such a great place to continue. So thank you for giving us that awareness. And a great place to be starting. And Matt, you've shared a lot about the concepts here, like with self-love and a lot of about ourself. And that's obviously it's the place that we want to start to make sure we can put our own oxygen mask on before we can help the others around us.
Right.
But there seems to be another 7.3 billion people on the planet apart from just us. And could you share a little bit about how does this I guess extend into those around us? What about communication with others around us? Conscious communication.
Sure.
What is that? Why is it so important? I'd love to hear a little bit about once we can kind of understand the steps and the journeys for ourselves. How do we actually communicate or interact with others around us?
Sure. Well, because we are all interconnected on a soul level, that means the love that you offer your heart are also blessings that are being transmitted to all hearts. Kind of like the energy of a tree extends equally to all branches. And so as the tree raises its vibration or expands its awareness to its source, so do all the branches get equally infused with that light and that energy. So in the same way as we individually love our own hearts, all hearts around us, all beings we are connected to, past, present, and otherwise, become uplifted and transformed by the love we give to ourselves. And of course, the more we love ourselves, the more it creates this elevated perception of unity consciousness where I can meet you as your own unique character. You and I are two different people on two different journeys. Yet at the same time, the love within me recognizes the light of my divinity as you. So I'm honoring you as a unique character, but I'm also treating and honoring you as the divine that I've discovered within myself. So the more that we love ourselves, the more we transform the planet, the more we create a tipping point for consciousness to awaken in all beings. And at the same time, the way we conduct ourselves and speak to other people in public become gifts that we receive in our own heart. So if we think of the laws of unity consciousness by loving my heart, all things are transformed. And the way I respond to others is a gift I give to myself. So we start to learn as we expand our consciousness that even if someone is not nice to us, retaliating negatively or judgmentally is going to be the kind of assault that I don't deserve to have. We start to realize that if I were to assault someone else, I would only be harming myself energetically. So even if someone who's acting inappropriately in our presence, who is just showing us through their conduct, I am someone who's on a very deep healing journey. I'm very much in pain, even though I'm not maybe aware of it. People's actions show us where they're at. It is only our responses that show us where we're at. So in what I call the love revolution or conscious communication, we're not matching other people's behavior with the same vibration. We are giving people the energy they need to heal by treating them better than they treat ourselves, primarily because the way we treat other people is a gift delivered into our hearts, just as much as we love ourselves in private is the way that we uplift the vibration of humanity for the well-being of all.
Thank you, Matt. Beautiful. And can you just share maybe a few tangible tips for that as well? Because again, the concept is so beautiful and the words are so eloquent. But you know, sometimes we're driving in traffic down the freeway and people are pulling in front of us. And sometimes we're at the grocery store and someone takes the last thing I've been waiting all day for that is just gone. And you know, sometimes someone says something that makes me feel terrible because it reminded me of, you know, a traumatic incident when I was a child. And sometimes that. And so the concepts of giving love and being in that space with people is definitely what we're working towards. What about everyone who's listening on the couch at the moment saying, yeah, no, I get that, but like, where do I start tangible day to day? Because you know what, I've had a lot of people that made me angry this morning already. A lot of people have done this. I do try and be conscious. I do try and be like that. You know, little tangible day to day stuff. Like what's some little tips or something like that that people could kind of start with? If I feel this, then I will do this. Or if this happens, then I should consider this. Or do you have any places to start on that? Because I love the concepts that you're sharing with us. They're so beautiful. And I just want to if I can get like a tangible place to start here. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so here's a revolutionary one, because sometimes people always want to say, well, can you just give me some place to start? But with a journey as magnificent as the spiritual journey, you can't really start. You can't really, like, there's no dipping your toe in, right? The water's going to be cold. You just got to put your foot in and then eventually you get in the water. So if we're going to talk about starting point, the starting point of a revolutionary journey is going to be a revolutionary starting point. And the revolutionary response of, if someone is not nice to me, what do I say to them? Thank you. Now, when someone hears me say that, and they think, I would say thank you to someone who is totally disrespectful and mean to me, because what happens is someone's energy of assault, of judgment, which is basically them just kind of expelling out of their field the things that they don't know how to deal with, and they send it your way. When you receive it as a gift and say thank you, you are transmuting the energy of that assault or projection and turning it into the energy that you would be blessed to receive as a gift. So the wisdom of this, even though the ego, you know, it triggers the you know what out of the ego, is if I can receive it as a gift and thank someone for what they did, even though it may not really deserve a thank you, I am transmuting the energy in their projection and only drinking in and receiving a gift that I'm worthy of. Now, some people would hear this and go, oh, that doesn't sound very authentic because I'm not feeling the thank you. But it's not a question of authenticity. It's a question of what kind of energy do I want to receive from the world? And when other people's pain is so deep that they are projecting like daggers onto me all the ways they were hurt by others, kind of like a soul's way of letting you know how little room it has to let you into their heart by replaying its abuse, by projecting it onto you. But instead of having to drink in the poison of that abuse, you can transmute it into the gift of their consciousness and take in the light of their consciousness instead by saying thank you, which means you've now avoided being hurt by them, and you've now given back to them the energy that they can receive to help them heal at a more conscious level. So when someone's not nice, thank you. When someone's mean, thank you. When someone is rude, thank you. When someone overlooks you, thank you. When someone lies to your face, thank you. And if you just need to say it inside your head and you can't get audacious enough to say it out loud, which I totally understand, even though I say it out loud all the time. Although nowadays I'm not in a position to say it in response to, such nasty things. But it's thank you. You're in traffic. Someone cuts you off. Thank you. And if that doesn't work, do you know what we do? We eat cake.
That's beautiful, man. That's the best.
I'm just kidding.
The best starting point. I love that. So thank you for sharing those words of thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're able to see the gift in everything, and even if we're not able to see the gift in everything, we understand there's a gift in everything, and we can say thank you now and actually understand maybe in the future why we said thank you at the time. So,
and I think, and again, just to piggyback on that, I think that's actually one of the greatest starting points is I can say thank you and know this is a gift without needing to know what the gift is or why it's a gift. That it will all come in due time, but if I just accept that everything is a gift, and again, I'm talking about social interactions. I'm not talking about if someone's being physically violated or abused. Obviously, if someone's being physically harmed, the first step is finding safety and being in an environment where people can be respected and treated with care, obviously. But we are referring to the social experiences of traffic and impatience and just, when people's egos get a little frustrated and a little triggered, and how that can cause us to be social victims to other people's unconscious healing journeys. But if we can say thank you to the things that don't really deserve gratitude, we are transforming all assaults into blessings for the evolution of ourselves and the entire planet.
Beautiful, Matt. And you touched on what you did just touch on there was those who might be listening in now who have had some of the tougher journeys and some things that have happened in their life. And I'd love to just explore that for a few minutes because a lot of us listening to this have either had those circumstances happen to us in some way, shape or form, or maybe to a friend or family member. How do we navigate that next deep layer of things that are, what we'd consider severe things that that do experience or result in significant trauma or significant issues with that? How do we navigate that from a bit more of a deeper level for people who have suffered from those sorts of things?
I think one of the most important things that gets really overlooked in the healing journey, and I say this just with respect to how many people I've worked with and what the common themes I see on a daily basis, is that it's one thing to have people very interested in getting beyond their victimhood and wanting to heal the traumas and transcend it. And I totally understand that because we all want to be free of pain, and we all, in a perfect world, would love to be able to let it go once and then everything disappears. But unfortunately, the journey is more complex than that. And what I find to be one of the greatest tools and companions, and of course, as we learn to love what arises, we start to have a better relationship with honesty. The phrase is, the truth shall set you free. And what I find is that a lot of spiritual beings who have been victimized by abuse, physical, sexual, mental, emotional abuse, they're trying so hard not to identify with the experience that they're in an unintentional way blocking some of the most profound healing. And what I've helped some people with is in not thinking of it as an identification, but if we can first admit to ourselves what has happened to us. If we could say, right? Without the belief of, I'm not going to admit this because I'm not going to let someone get to me, and they don't, all that kind of egoic pride defense mechanism stuff. If we can admit, yes, I've been hurt, I've been abused, I've been dominated, I've been mistreated, and it has totally and completely scarred me to the core of my being. If we can authentically admit that, that doesn't create an identity or identification. That doesn't create what people call a story. That actually brings honesty to full awareness of, this happened to me, I didn't deserve it, I don't know why this happened, and it has scarred me to the core of my being. I have been victimized, and it hurts and has made such an impression on my being. Now, if we can admit something that deeply, you can probably feel in your body, like I can feel in mine, how much relief arises. Because once we first admit the absolute truth, then we can start to move beyond it. But what a lot of people try to do is they want to move beyond it without admitting the truth. And unfortunately, it doesn't work in that order. And again, in order to develop the courage, in order to develop the strength to make such a confession, to be able to say, yes, I was victimized, I played the character in that scene that I didn't know I was going to play. And if I had the choice, I wouldn't have chosen that. I was the victim of abuse. In order to find the courage to authentically claim that, and the irony is, once you fully admit what has happened to you, is when you begin to free yourself from those consequences or confines. In order to find the true authentic courage to do that, that's where self-love comes into play. So we are loving ourselves to develop the courage to face and admit the truth. It's a very deep journey that I take quite seriously.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for sharing those words with a lot of people who are listening to that right now. And from Matt, when we do reach that point and we can have that conversation with ourselves, or however that needs to happen with whoever that happens with, but what's the next steps from there? Because that is a very important place, and a lot of people, I can probably get a lot of relief just from hearing you say those words.
Right.
They've got permission now to be able to actually, that is something that we don't have to fight or defend or block out. It's something I can have permission to say that. What's next for them? If they're now in a vulnerable state, where next on the journey would you suggest, or what can you share with us about that?
Well, first we admitted what we don't want to admit, right? And I said that, and we felt a lot of relief. The next step, in no particular order, would be the other side of honesty, where the other side of honesty is allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, and often the gateway to vulnerability is admitting what we don't know how to do. Like, I don't know how to stop eating cake when I know it's not good for me. I don't know how to stop making bad choices. I don't know how to stop feeling bad about myself. I don't know how to stop feeling worthless. I don't know how to stop feeling ugly and undesirable. I don't know how to stop thinking that I don't have the right to live. I don't know how to stop getting in my way. I don't know how to stop being my biggest critic and obstacle. I don't know how to stop being the way I am. I don't know how to be any other way. I don't know how to be the way I want to be. And when we start to use honesty to admit what we don't know, to admit what we don't know how to do, that's when we start to open ourselves up, and we literally signal with the I don't know a message to the universe. Because whatever we admit that we don't know how to do, or we don't know, the universe then is attracted into our field to be the one to either do it through us or to show us how. So we call upon the universe by admitting what we don't know how to do. And most people don't want to do that or don't know how to do that. And instead they say, I'm going to have to figure it out myself. But the reality is, if you don't know how to do it, admit you don't know how to do it, and let the universe work through you and show you how, or do it through you. And sometimes it's that kind of simple insight that really starts to put all the pieces together in a very profound way.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's such an important point to say there. And there's a lot of people out there that are there to support you. There's a lot of ways that things show up without you even having a clue. And often, as you shared today on this call so clearly, you don't know what it might be. We may be often attached to it needs to look this way or it needs to look that way, but how it shows up is not really up to us most of the time. So
Well, and think of it this way. A lot of people come conditioned with, when I was in school, not knowing was not good. If I didn't know on a test, I got a bad grade. If I didn't know what my mom and dad are asking me, I got punished. So, you know, it's very common in society where you learn very young, you have to know. And when you're in a state of I don't know authentically, it can often lead to some rather extreme punishment and persecution and judgment. And so really we're untangling that web by saying, contrary to how you may have experienced life around your family or schooling or whatever it was, the universe is a far different relationship. And if you would just in your own consciousness admit what you don't know how to do, or admit what you don't know how to change, then you can call on the universe and say, hey, universe, I don't know how to do this. Can you please work through me and show me how to do it differently, or do it differently through me, and your will become my own. And that's when we really start to really surrender to, I admit the pain that has happened to me that I'm not avoiding. I admit what I don't know how to do, and what I don't know how to change. And I call on the universe to work through me to bring that change to life as I serve the will of the divine, instead of just trying to serve the fulfillment of my personal desires, which will only make me more hungrier.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. This is such an interesting conversation, such an important conversation. And I know that we're not going to get probably to the answer of the meaning of life on today's call, but everybody listening who's getting a lot of value out of this and really finding these concepts and these understandings really, really important for your own life, please go and check out truedivinenature.com, where you can find out so much more about Matt and all the stuff that he talks about. Matt, I'd love to just to ask you, we've talked about some pretty big topics today, actually, and some really important ones. And just bridging the science and spirituality gap, and we've gone back to some tangible things in terms of how mind works and our emotions and navigating through those sorts of things. What do you see as the fundamental keys to spiritual evolution? Where we've been, where we're going. Can you share a little bit about that from that sort of back to the bigger perspective again? Now, I'd love to sort of just see what's in your space around that.
Absolutely. I mean, it'd be no surprise if I said that the key to spiritual evolution is loving ourselves more often, and loving ourselves and loving each other. I mean, it's loving ourselves that melts our defenses. It's loving ourselves that heals all wounds, that resolves all imbalances. It's loving ourselves that will trigger and tell the immune system to start working in a better way and to start healing itself naturally. It's loving one another that will start to allow us all to be different, but united on a very deep spiritual level. I mean, any goal you could imagine from the spiritual journey, oneness with the divine, the ability to manifest in a more masterful way, to heal the body completely, to activate my intuitive gifts, to be more clear in my intuition, to fulfill my life purpose, to manifest my soulmate. I mean, we can go on with all the things people really want. All of those things will come to us and more when we give our time and choices to loving ourselves. Again, coming back to a very, very famous quote, not to just, but to paraphrase it, enter the kingdom and all these things and more will be given to you. What is the kingdom of heaven? I mean, we could talk about it in grandiose fashion, but the kingdom of heaven is your divine heart space. Your heart is the door into the kingdom of heaven. So the statement, enter the kingdom, means return to your heart. Be the one that loves you the way the universe always has. Align with the love of the universe by loving yourself more and aligning with your breath. When you enter the doorway of the kingdom of your heart, all these things you want, plus more, will be given, but return to the kingdom first. Enter your heart, love what arises.
Matt, I really appreciate everything you're sharing with us today on the call, and the insights, the wisdom, and the knowledge that's coming through for everybody on this call, but for everyone to find out and to really trigger. I hope that there's been a few points to everybody listening to this, and I'm sure some people will be listening to this replay a few times. Matt, if you had to share one message that you would share from the rooftops, obviously love is a very common theme. What would be your message to everybody who will be hearing, will not be hearing? What would be your message for the world right now?
I think what I would shout from the rooftops would just be the demonstration of me being one with my breath. And anything that I would say from that breath would be the powerful message for the world to hear. But no matter what powerful message anyone hears, no matter what message any teacher, any luminary, or any being says, the only things that truly touch us are because it's not necessarily the words that are touching us, but it's the breath within those words that are touching us. And where it touches us is returning our awareness to where the breath is, to where the breath is received, and where the breath is sent from. So the most inspirational words anyone says is only designed to align you back with the breath that we have in some way innocently divorced ourselves from. So again, what would I shout from the rooftops? A breath. What would I say? I would probably say, I love you. I'd probably say, I am the light I am, which will probably be, which are for me probably the words that encapsulate of all the experiences I've had in my entire life. I am the light I am encapsulates the all that is of my entire magnificent journey and what continues to be. But in that statement, I am the light I am, it is only so that the breath that goes out with those words hits people so deeply in their heart that it returns their attention to the breath that they've been overlooking, and they return home to the kingdom so that all these things and more can be given to them. I am the light I am.
Matt, thank you so much for being here. We've covered a lot of great concepts and a lot of ground today, from I guess starting with eating cake and how it's helping me is actually just such a great question, and I really hope everyone can take that home, because how is this cake helping me? It really will set the scene for where to move forward with. Can we be happy without getting our way? I guess looking at a revolutionary starting point to be saying thank you to someone who's not nice to you. So thank you.
That's right.
Thank you for that, and thank someone for the gift that you're receiving, without attachment or without even knowing, what's going on in that circumstance. To have honesty and vulnerability, to admit what we don't know, and to enter the kingdom and return to our heart and share the breath within and be more loved. So Matt, an incredible call today. Thank you so much for your time for being here. I really, really appreciate it, and I really, really appreciate all of you for listening into this, for investing your time into yourselves, because this is where it starts. And as you've heard so clearly from Matt today on the call, it starts with you, and it actually starts and finishes with you, because this is what we get. So Matt, thank you so much again. Thank you all for being here. A big thank you to our major sponsors, the Ultimate Human Foundation, for the great work they're doing with eliminating chronic pain and disease from the planet. Thank you to PH360 for helping understand about your journey and where you're on, and some of the navigations through mind and emotions and other things that are specific to you, as well as the foods and exercises and the things we always talk about in science and medicine. But I've really enjoyed today's conversation, Matt, to delve into the other side of why we're here. Now it'll be the bigger conversation about that. So thank you once again for being here, Matt Kahn. Thank you all for listening in, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again on our next call. Thanks once again.
Thank you.